Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Manufacturing Alliance podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tony Demakis from Alliance Prestige and Laser Sales, and this is take two. We tried to do this last week, and we had a whole host of technical glitches and things that did not go according to plan. And so, we have regrouped, we have refocused, we have taken a step back and said, okay, let's just pause and have a redo. We had our golf outing on Friday. We would say we had a mulligan, and we're back again with our same guest, and we're excited to be doing this again here with you guys. So this is a live show as always. So if you're watching, if you're listening, go ahead and put your thoughts and opinions in the chat box, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on YouTube, and we will be happy to answer those questions and get back to you in real time. Come on. There we go. I was actually trying to get it to go on LinkedIn, and it's there. And there are multiple people watching. So if you're there, do me a favor, drop your name and your company in the chat so that we can give you a shout out. It's the easiest marketing you'll do all year long. Promise you. What's coming up? We have the AMBA Chicago Supplier Night coming up. I'm not sure on the date. It's coming up. It's coming up soon. We will be there. We love to help and be with our friends at the AMBA. But all of our major things are done. And it's really, really, really exciting for us because now we can get back to what we do best, which is serving our mold making community in the areas of polishing, laser welding, laser engraving, hot runner repair. What am I missing? Mold maintenance, and building the only US-made laser welding and laser engraving systems specifically for tool room repair. Now we're getting more into production welding. So if you are in the manufacturing space and you are trying to find somebody to help you with your production welding, listen, we want to grow with you. We don't have minimums. Some people have minimum orders where you have to have 10,000 parts or they won't help you. That's not us. We want to start with you on the ground floor. We want to help you develop a process and get to where you need to be and help you grow and grow along with you. So if you have any interest in any of the things I said, or you would just like to talk more, you can go to our website at alliancelasersales.com, or you can send me an email at tony@alliancelasersales.com, and we'll be happy to get all the information over to you that you may or may not need. Hey, my friend Richard Evans is here with us. Richard, cheers. Thanks for the mug once again. You keep me hydrated every time we do this, and I love you for it. So this week we have we have a guest. He's the same guest that was supposed to be on last week when things did not go according to plan. Pete Winiarski is with us. I'm gonna bring him in. Pete, how the heck are you, my friend?
I am here, Tony. Thank you so much. And I love the mulligan analogy, right? We're here with a mulligan.
We are here with a mulligan, and we're gonna do the best that we can. So, Pete, you have like a long laundry list of qualifications and things that people should know you for. Author of multiple best-selling books on business transformation, leadership, goal achievement, high integrity consulting. Act Now, a daily action log for achieving your goals in 90 days. Stop wasting money on the wrong consultant. How to pick the right consultant to create huge profits, long-term ROI. Virtual teams, ignite your leadership. You are one of those guys that I love to talk to because you are all in on the idea of business and leadership and growth and what that looks like. So, I'm looking forward to being able to dive into some of those topics with you today and just and see where this goes. And no pressure, but one of my partners, Kirby and Michelle, are on the road and they're listening to us also. So, if it's terrible, they're going to let me know. I don't think it's going to be terrible. I think it's going to be great because we already experienced what it could be like if things go haywire. So,
how about this? If I can suggest, if it's terrible, let me know. If it's great, let Tony know.
Listen, just put it in the chat if you like it or if you don't, and and we'll both figure this out as we get there.
Right.
So in a nutshell, do me a favor and tell me, who you are a little bit more in depth than what I just did, and why people want to listen to us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having me on. So, the company is Win Enterprises, winenterprisesllc.com. So you can dig in there. And essentially, we're a service provider now that is business consulting, you referenced the high integrity consulting part. So business consulting is on, a core, but there's other services that we provide as well, including, helping businesses that are in a growth mode to get business financing. So then there's all the strategies in between. How do you take your company, if you're privately held and you're thinking that you want to sell it at some point in a few years, designing that, what's the end game? How do we get you there? So as the CEO, I lead this business and lead this company. The background leading up to this, I had some professional consulting experiences, with McKinsey Company, George Group Consulting, and some others along the way. And then prior to that, some really right place, right time opportunities with, the first company out of the gates when I was just graduated college was called the Wiremold Company, which now, of course, if you know anything about lean manufacturing, lean production systems, full lean business transformations, you can't help but bump into the Wiremold story. And so that's where I cut my teeth. And then, Danaher was another business that I was a leader at for a few years in the middle. So, some real, Danaher's a Wall Street darling, known for, its Danaher business systems. When the Wall Street analysts look at Danaher, they always say Danaher's going to do great because they grow through acquisition. They have this new technology. Usually there's something, and then this mysterious thing that they don't really understand, but they always talk about the Danaher business system. So, that's it in a nutshell. Some really good experiences that got me in the right place at the right time. And now it's like, how do we package that up and teach other people? Part of my, Tony, if I can say it, part of my personal drive and purpose has to do with sharing what I've learned.
Okay.
And so that's where books come in. That's where doing things like this podcast with you come in. And certainly that's what, helping people one at a time, one company at a time, one team at a time, one leader at a time, out there in the world with the clients we have.
And I think that to me is the most important thing, right? Understanding your personal why or your organizational why on what gets you up in the morning and what the focus is. It's not profits. It's not making money. That can't be the end goal. If that's the end goal, you're going to fail because you're never gonna live up to what you want to be. It's got to be more than that, and it's got to be that higher calling, that higher why on what makes you get up in the morning, right?
Yeah, and if I can say something else that's interesting about my background, there's a lot of work I've done in the professional and personal development space. The really human performance. How do we maximize? That's where the book about goal achievement came into play. Act Now, a daily action log, and I was doing a lot of work supporting someone named Jack Canfield. Jack's known for writing all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, but he's also known for the success principles. And in the seminars that Jack leads that I would support at, there's some exercises that we would do that you imagine the goal that you have. So let's, there's a lot of individuals in there that want, say more money. And so they set their income level goal, and then put the why attached to it. And if the why is how it benefits you versus if the why is how it benefits other people, there's an actual physical response in your body that is different. And it is more positive and more enabling if your why has to do with how you help and support other people. So it's fascinating. There's some science behind it, some truth behind it. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, we talk about that all the time. If you're, especially with my kids, if you're in a funk in your life or, things don't seem right, or you got a little bit of depression, if you can go out of your way and serve somebody else and do something for somebody else, it automatically, it lifts you up. Like you feel better. Part of that is you stop putting the focus on yourself and you realize that there's other people in the world that you need to take care of, and you get a positive response back from them. And if you're stuck in that funk and you've got this mindset, then everybody can feel that energy also. Right. It's not a feel good kind of thing. Your feelings, your emotions, everybody's got them, but it's not, there's a real energy that you put off to people, and it's contagious. So if it's a positive energy, it's a negative energy, you can feel that. There's those people that you want to be around, and there's people that you don't want to be around. and they could say the exact same thing. It's just, what are they bringing into the space and into the room and into the conversation?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's just one of many things we can teach our kids.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
thought about doing a book at one point about sort of those lessons to hand down, and now my two sons are a little bit older. They're 19 and 21. It's not too late. It's just that
No,
the
it's not.
lessons have changed. The lessons have changed from make sure you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth to some more practical life skills.
Well, and it sounds to me like you've got volume 1 and volume 2 there.
Yeah, possibly. That's right.
And I think, some of those skills that we give our kids, even when they're young, they translate to when they're old, and the same kinds of things that we want to do with the culture and our team at work. Not that the people we work with are children. That's not what I'm saying. But the same way that you want to go home and you want to give your kids attention, and you want to help them structure their focus, and you want to help them achieve and accomplish goals, it's the same kind of conversations and attitudes that you want to have with the team that you have at work all the time. Would you agree?
I would, and in fact, that while they're not children, they are your family. If you think about it
Yes.
that way, and family from the standpoint of sometimes there's tough love involved. Sometimes you have to step up and be a leader. Sometimes you have to give feedback. People think that well, if we treat employees like our family, it's just a giant group hug, and can we really get
Yeah.
anything done? And for those of you who have dysfunctional families, that's not the family we're trying to talk about here. It's the one where there's love and support, and there's the essence of where do we want to go together, and let's go there together. And
Yep.
really that includes communication skills, visibility to where we're headed. It includes hearing people's ideas, getting them engaged and involved, getting them excited about where they're going, developing their skills, building up. What's it required to go from point A to point B, and let's help to make sure people have those skills.
I read something, I don't know, remember where I read it, but I go back and forth between saying that Alliance is a family and Alliance is a team. And the thing I read that stuck out to me is, you mentioned there are many different kinds of families, right? There's quality families, and then there's dysfunctional families.
Right.
Either one, you're stuck, right? You this is your family. You can't leave. The beauty of looking at it as a team is the people around us are here because they choose to be here, because there's value in working together in creating something awesome. Nobody's stuck. Nobody has to be an Alliance employee for the rest of their lives. That's something that they can choose to be, and that effort and that teamwork all comes together. And so I kind of went away from, listen, I'm going to love you like family, but I'm going to treat you like team,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to grow and get better together as a unit, as a cohesive unit, and again, you have dysfunctional teams and you have championship teams. I want to work and thrive in an organization as a championship team, with that singular focus of how do we win together? What does that look like? And defining those things that are wins for us as an organization.
Yeah, and even that championship team, if pick your sport, there's a season, and you're the champion of that season, and then
Right.
there's a renewal. You have to go through it all over again. If it's baseball, you go back to spring training. You go through the exercises of getting the team that might be dysfunctional at the beginning, injury plagued or whatever the case and the metaphor might be, and you've got to find ways to get people to back each other up. Find a way to if that person's not able to step in, who's covering for them? This is where cross training and all of these other themes really come into play. A lot of I did a lot of baseball coaching when the kids were younger, and
Yeah.
certainly the there were teams that I had at the beginning of the season that didn't win a lot of games, but we were learning and putting the building blocks in place so that by the end of the season, when the playoffs started, we were better than we were before. And I've had other coaches say, wow, you got your team to play over their level. And I took it as a compliment, but it was also not accurate, because I think what we did is we raised the level at which they could perform. So
Sure.
the perception that everyone else had that they weren't that good, and then they started to win a lot, really was we were raising the bar of what they were capable of doing. And really, that's part of building the championship and winning team in a business. Same principle with just make sure you put the renewal in there.
Yeah. There's gonna be growing pains, right? Especially if you're starting out, you're bringing in the rookies that have to learn what they don't even know yet. And so there's got to be a lot of coaching that starts out in the beginning. So I get that with kids, right? You can kind of mold them a little bit more. They're a little bit like silly putty, where you can kind of show them what you want. They can mimic you a little bit better. They'll rebound faster, and they're not as stuck in their ways. When you're going into an organization and you're doing consulting, how do you get the more seasoned veterans uh, to get on board with what's going on and follow in the direction that the company wants to go?
Well, it's not about where we want to take them, it's about where they want to go. And really, it's about alignment. So if you can understand the direction that the company wants to go,
Yep.
still the company is made up of individuals. And so the individual, these veterans who may be not totally bought in, if we go at it and try and jam an agenda down their throats,
Yep.
it's a fail. Like it's not going to work. We sometimes have to scale back our aspirations to make sure that we're getting people to come along when they're ready at their pace. So it's about meeting them where they are, which sometimes isn't where you want them to be, but then taking them where either they want to go because their goals are aligned, or we know because of our expertise and our background what would be a higher level of success for them, and help guide them there. And we guide them there through little wins, listening, solving their problems. So what's important to them, and demonstrating that the concepts, either that the company wants to go or the ideas that we know can help them, but they just haven't had that the epiphany yet, that to give them the wins along the way so that they get excited and then buy in.
Right. One of the big things that we've started to focus on when we're trying to make, overarching changes, or, revamping process, or asking people to do things differently, is taking the time to explain the why in the situation. Once people understand that there was a problem, and what we're proposing helps to solve that problem, there's more buy-in to the process. It's not just, uh, Tony's got some harebrained scheme and he wants to make changes to make our lives miserable. On the surface, that's what it could look like. But in reality, there's things that may be going on that people don't realize. And so we have to look at that and identify those areas of concern, and find ways to make make solutions out of those problems. And one of the things that we've been more successful at lately is bringing more people together to help come up with those solutions. Is that something that you recommend?
A team-based approach is always better than an individual trying to figure it out. So
Yeah.
absolutely, and the depending on what the project is, you're defining a problem. So the clarity of the problem statement includes why is it a problem and how does it impact people. So if you
Sure.
get people to line up behind that and say, okay, yeah, that is a problem, we have to fix that. And by the way, a problem or a goal to achieve, if the goal can tie to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
back to our earlier bigger why, make the why about your customer base, not about the shareholders and the owners, personal wealth. Make
Yep.
it about the customer. Every employee I've ever bumped into at any company I've worked at or consulted to understands that the customer is really, really important. And they
Yeah, you
all,
would think so.
yeah, it's a natural, okay, let's go. If this is going to help the customer out, I'm interested. Tell me more.
Yeah. And sometimes, what we talk about, I learned this from Westminster Tool out in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Your customer is the next person in line that you have to do a service for. So your customer may be the guy next to you on the bench. If you are
Right.
bringing him the goods, he's the customer. It's not the end customer that we're necessarily worried about. It's the next person in line that you're helping and that you're serving. If you make their life easier, then they can make their customers' life easier, and so on and so on and so on down the line. And then you achieve your goal, and everybody's life has been made a little bit better. Those Westminster guys are pretty smart. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I was out. I was out with them maybe I don't know 2 months or so ago, and part of what was also impressive about Westminster was the people who were giving us the tour and describing what we were doing were the people at work there, right? They took ownership at that lowest level, and that's a function of the culture that the team there has created over time, and it's working, and it's working really well.
And what's amazing is like you have so many people that hear the stories about going out there and they think it's fluff until you go out there and you experience how much they actually care, and that the Westminster way, it's a real thing. And they're not worried about people coming in and being copycats. They would actually encourage it. But what they'll tell you is it's really, really hard. It's really, really expensive. And people are going to quit along the way, whether in their organization or stop trying to achieve this level of buy-in from everybody in their company. Because it's not easy.
The ones who decide not to quit and decide to stick around are there for the long haul, decades, but potentially longer. It's exciting that way. When there's similar to Westminster, Zappos, during the time when Tony Hsieh was the CEO, they're famously known for at the end of the job interview and the orientation. So someone gets hired on and they go through orientation and they describe, what's the job responsibility and what are we all about here? They then make them an offer to quit. They make them an offer. We're going to give you cash if you decide to quit before X number of days. And some people take the deal, right? The people who take the deal clearly are not really bought into the system. They're not bought into the culture. They're not going to make it long term anyways. Right. So let's find that out now. Here's a check. Go on your way. No harm, no foul. We'll see you later.
I think it would hurt my feelings if people took the money and left. But I can appreciate that, right? Right. I can appreciate that you're being an organization that's forward thinking and saying, who are the people that are really like us, that get the culture, that get the core value, that want to be part of the process and do these things. And let's be honest, everybody is at work to make money. I mean, otherwise it would be a hobby and people wouldn't have to pay you. So that's obviously a concern. But is it more than the money, or is it just the money? That's a very big, broad question. Some people, they just want to go to work to make their money, and they don't care what the organization is like. They don't care what the culture is like. They just want their paycheck, and they're fine with whatever that looks like. I can't be that person. It's not in my DNA. It's one of those things.
Some of the psychology models really help us understand. You think of Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. There are some people who are at the foundational levels of security and foundation things that need to be in place. They're struggling. They need the money. They're in that repair and recovery part of their life, perhaps, or they haven't really extended up. Whereas others, they're at the higher half of the pyramid, and they're motivated to things that are a little bit bigger and more exciting and existential, and the why matters. This is some of the psychology, psychoanalytics tools that we use get at individuals' preferences and how are they wired, and it doesn't really talk to their skills. You could see skills, you can measure skills differently, but you can't really see how somebody's wired, right? You can't see what's driving them and what they prefer, how they prefer to work, how they prefer to work in a team or as an individual, et cetera. So that's where some of the psychology tools really help from a leadership and a team perspective.
And if you are following along, we love the Westminster tool, and they are big on the DISC profile. So we've started using that a little bit. We don't dive into it as much as they do, but it's good when we have somebody come on that's a new hire, and we ask them to fill out a disc profile, and we go and we actually look at it with them. We go, okay, is this accurate based on this? This is kind of what it tells us about you, and the way you like to learn, and the way that the kinds of jobs that you might like. Is that accurate? And we had one guy, he looked at me and he was like, it's really creepy how much you know about me right now. And I was like, listen, you filled it out.
Yeah.
I'm just reading back to you what we're learning as we go through this. And it's a good thing because he felt it was accurate. So now we know, like, maybe he would be the absolute wrong person to go do a sales call, because he would rather be by himself in a very secure space where he can focus on doing the same task over and over again and become a specialist and an expert at it. That's somebody that's way different than that wants to wing it on the road and kind of wheel and deal and freelance and move and shake. Those are two totally different people. And so if it's a quality individual, the worst thing you can do is put them in the wrong role, put them in the wrong seat for your organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talk about getting people in the right seats on the bus, and
Yeah.
there's those people. Virgin is like this with their hiring practices, where let's hire for character, let's hire for value alignment. We'll worry about the skill, they're getting their resume to match up. Whereas a lot of people, they go to the resume, they say, oh, we need someone who's an expert in XYZ, and they hire someone who's actually not a fit, but they hire them because the skills suggested that that's what they need. So if you get someone who's got the raw material and the competency, you can end up far better off. I know Westminster has this philosophy. You name it. There's a lot of business. Zappos. I talked about, Virgin. I talked about the idea of hiring for core value alignment.
Yep.
You can't teach that. You can teach the skill.
And that's one of those things where we're 100% in agreement. We like to hire people for character. You can teach people the skill set that they need. That's fine, but you can't teach somebody how to be a good human being.
Right.
That's a harder thing to find and train. And if you find that quality person, you better hold on to them.
Yes.
And most organizations have enough different areas that you can take somebody and you can fill them into a different role. If they're not succeeding in one space, but they're a quality person, you can move them into a different role within the organization. That way you're holding on to somebody who's gonna be there, that gets it, that has those core values, that are there for the real purpose, not just the end of the day, the end of the week, the paycheck. There's more behind them. And that's a quality person that you can't pass up on.
Yeah, there are definitely people who are the right person for your company.
Yep.
That happen to today be in the wrong job for their skill sets, their motivations, their preferences, et cetera. And so if you have the flexibility and can move them out of the role into a role that is a good fit for them, then it's a win for them. It's a win for you. What a lot of businesses do is they say, well, that person's failing, we'll have to kick them out. And they lose a great resource. Whereas if they could position them, in a different spot. Now, sometimes you don't know, because leaders don't always know their team members very well. And so it really is incumbent upon the team leaders, or the leaders of the organization, to get to know the people on their teams and on their extended teams better than they do perhaps today. And that requires a little bit of extra attention. It requires conversation. It requires giving them a stretch challenge and seeing how they perform. A lot of times when you talked about the team-based problem solving and implementing and doing it as a team, there's a lot of times where I've seen team members that were, not that they weren't thought of highly, but they just weren't thought of, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yep.
And then they excel in that new environment. Like, wow, here they are over in the corner just doing an adequate job every day. And then you put them in this other environment and they excelled.
Yep. And it's such a crazy thing, because you find that thing that makes people's eyes light up, right? Maybe they feel like they're stuck and this is the only job that they can do. And once they are given more authority or more responsibility, more creativity, more ability to flow and adjust to what they need to do, it's invigorating for a lot of people. Some people don't like that. And again, that's where you got to know your people, right? Some people like to have everything laid out. They need that schedule. They want to be, they want to just have it all laid out in front of them. Other people want to be able to freelance and flow and do those things. So how do you do that? I mean, we've got all these bullet points that we're going to talk about. How do you improve your team? How do you improve that leader performance?
Yeah, well, we were talking about, some of the psychographic, tools. You mentioned DISC as one. We happen to use Insights Discovery. I was a Myers-Briggs user for decades. And then
I've taken all the tests. They're so much fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of a junkie that way too, right?
Yeah.
And I learned something.
You go through and you're like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's me.
Right. So whether you use, an external, psychology model driven tool to help you or not, the fundamentals really come down to what are the team goals, what are the company goals, and what are the individual goals, and can you get alignment there? If you can have your individual team members get excited about something that is motivating to them, that just so happens to be aligned with and supporting what your department or your team and as well your company are there to do, then you have a triple win. And it's almost like we use the metaphor of a stream or a river, and with the flowing water, and you're in a boat, you're in a canoe with your one paddle. And we use this a lot. It happens to fit here. If you get the alignment, the paddle for the canoe, you are going with the current, and it's easier. Sure. And that's where you're headed. And of course, the opposite is what happens if you don't have alignment, or you don't have the right team members in the right seats on the bus. You might be paddling in the opposite direction. People are working hard. You're not getting to where you really want to go.
Yep. We talk about that all the time, making sure that everybody on the team is rowing in the same direction. Having that alignment, having that beacon that we're all striving for, that we're all trying to get to. And what does that actually look like? And does everybody understand it? I think there's a lot of times I've had the problem even with my kids where, the expectations that you have in your brain are different than the expectations that have been communicated out to the individuals or the teams or what they're trying to live up to. And, if everybody's not on the same page, it's not fair.
Yeah. Well, I love the rowing in the same direction, because you think of a round raft and everybody with their paddle on the right side of the boat. You're just going to go in circles all day long.
And I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, that's how you would encourage people to create culture.
Yeah. So there's, culture is,
it's such a buzzword right now, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of a buzzword always until you understand a little bit deeper what it actually means and what it represents. Okay. So for example, if you have an idea of what it is you want to want to create, then you can go out of your way to create the culture you want.
Sure.
Culture is the way work gets done. It's how it gets done today. It's invisible. You can't see it. So we talk about it as it's the function of, first, everybody's set of beliefs, and your beliefs and your core values are extremely aligned. So my values are the beliefs that I feel most strongly about, whether or not I can articulate them. Sure. But they're invisible. Well, my values and my beliefs dictate my thought process, how I think, which, by the way, is also invisible. So then my thoughts is really what drives my actions, my behaviors, what I do, what I say. And that is finally something that you can see. So if you want to observe culture, you observe, well, how do things get done here today? And you see how people speak up at meetings or don't. I can tell you of a culture example where as soon as the boss walks in the room, everyone's quiet and defers to the boss's opinion.
Yep.
That's a cultural element. It may not be the best way to go about it. It may not be what's desired, but it is how work gets done today. So that's an example of culture. If you want to change that, you have to start with being okay to look in the mirror, assess what is today, which you may not like, and then compare that to, well, what would we really like to have in place?
Right.
And then you can look at, well, what's the gap between, if you go cultural attribute by attribute, so to speak, then you can end up saying, aha, we have work to do on this one. Maybe it's the idea of we want people to take on, feel free to speak up and make mistakes. Whereas today they defer to the boss, right? They sit back. Well, if that's what's really happening, then there are some behavioral things that you need the boss to do. And there's behavioral things that you need the team to do.
Right.
In order to adjust the behaviors, though, you've got to go deeper. You've got to go, well, what are the thought processes that are driving the behaviors? Things like, it's not safe to speak up in a meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? Well, because someone got yelled at or whatever, right? And you could start peeling it back, and then you find, okay, here are some of the root causes to address. Let's reward and enhance the behaviors we want to see, and let's step on the behaviors we don't want with first gentle feedback, but then it may have to, you may have to turn up the volume on some things.
And I love that. And I think some people make the mistake of forgetting that every organization, every family, every group of people currently today has a culture, right?
That's right.
Just like dysfunctional families and well-rounded Norman Rockwell families, everybody falls in that spectrum somewhere. So wherever you're working, there is a culture. You may not like the culture. It may not be a positive culture. It may need some work that gets done in there, but there's a living, breathing culture that's there. And sometimes you have to realize that you as an individual may not fit in this current culture, and it's never going to change. That organization is never going to change. And you can sit there and wait for it to change. But if the leadership team, if it's a bad culture, it's probably just a boss, right? Let's be honest. If the head doesn't see the issues, that culture is never going to change.
Yeah, you mentioned the bad boss. Unfortunately, there are bad bosses out there. Bad boss is not. It's a rating or a label given to by their team, so by the subordinates. People quit bosses more than they quit jobs. So it's really important to make sure that leader and team relationship is solid. If you don't like the culture today, you can choose to leave.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's always a choice that we have. And unfortunately, culture is really hard to change because you need support all the way up and down the organization in order to pull it off.
It's like there's been my mind. I was going to ask you this exact question. What do you,
right.
If you're a member of a company, you're an employee of a company, how do you get the boss to realize that there's things that you're seeing that maybe could use some tweaking? How do you get the boss to see that maybe they're that person that stifles a room and says, no, we're just doing it my way, or speaks up on top of people? How do you get them to realize that without losing your job?
Yeah, this is where relationship really matters. And so even though you're in this example, I may be the employee who has a boss who is behaving badly. I need to establish a relationship with that other person that is safe for me to say something.
Sure.
And so I will build trust over time. I will build a relationship that I do give feedback and it is received, and I do it in a way that, I don't get slammed, and that every time that happens, it's a win. There's a very good chance that an individual would love to hear some feedback because in the absence of feedback, they have no idea something's happening. So part of this starts with, a chosen belief inside of me, which might be, I'm going to choose to believe that, Tony, let's say that you're my boss, and this is so just to put names at it and take it out of, hypothetical. All right, Tony responded in a certain way, and I saw the impact to the other employee. I'm going to make the assumption that Tony doesn't know he did that. So I'm going to go chat with him. And then I'm going to be really soft, permission based, which is, hey, Tony, do you mind if I share something that I observed?
Sure.
Wow, I'm interested. Tell me more, right? So that, hey, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback?
Yep.
Oh, interesting. Maybe, right? But the point is, it's built over time. I think this is why a lot of times when there are cultural rifts, or if there's a particular team within an organization that's kind of culturally misaligned with where you want the business to go, that's how consultants get called in, because it's a lot easier for me as an outsider to provide feedback. There's a few of the culture shifting engagements we've done at companies came from first our observations, but then the conversation went to, hey, I want you to be aware that this sort of behavior exists.
Right.
And would you agree that that's probably not the behavior that you really want? I'm like,
Right.
well, yeah, absolutely. How do we fix that? And then we get into a conversation about it that might lead to, let's redefine, kind of a bigger, let's redefine the culture we want, and let's make it a big exercise to get people's beliefs, thinking, and then behaviors to realign to what it is we want.
Do you ever, I'm sure you, ever is a very broad term. How often does it happen where you get brought in to do some consulting or look at a company's culture or dive into trying to help them in some way, where you go through all the process, you spend time with them, you dig in, you make some observations, and they say, listen, you're just wrong. Thanks, but no thanks, because they're so ingrained in their methodology and their process.
Well, I think on day one, you could hear those words.
Yeah,
As you get into it, though, people's guards tend to come down, and they open up their eyes because of the dynamic, very similar to what I just described. Hey, would you be willing to hear some
yep,
feedback? Do I have your permission to share something that I just observed? Language like that. On day one, we've got situations all the time, even if it's not a culture engagement. The
sure,
engagement might be, go and improve productivity or improve the effectiveness of a team, or reduce lead time, or help with cost reductions, or whatever it might be. There's some other business objective, and within that, we can't help but see cultural attributes at play.
yeah,
And when those cultural attributes aren't totally supportive, we may even identify, whoa, that leader of this group, maybe they're a vice president, maybe they're an executive, maybe they're a president, whatever their title might be. If we're able to see it, it still doesn't mean that we cannonball into the swimming pool
sure,
with feedback. We say, okay, let's figure out, how do we message this so that they will accept and listen to the message. So things like surveys come into play. Anonymous surveys are really helpful. Even interviews. We as external people can interview and summarize the interview and keep the who said what out of it. But say,
sure,
hey, the way that you're perceived is X.
right,
Like, well, and the early days might be, well, they have it wrong.
right,
Okay, maybe so. But why do they perceive it differently then? And let's clarify the problem statement and identify the gap to fix. And so
yep,
it might be, wow, you really do have everything that they want. They don't realize that you have it. So
right,
what's the problem to solve? Making them aware of what you have. Maybe it's not in the right format. Okay, so how do we get you to adjust the format to make it useful to who? Your internal customer. Bringing
exactly,
things full circle.
exactly. And so you take the opposite of a Gordon Ramsay approach, right? It wouldn't make for good TV,
You
because
donut?
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's I always laugh when I watch like Kitchen Nightmares, or right, like and it's all scripted, right? I know reality TV is not real. I'm not that naive, But you have these people where the restaurants are terrible, they're failing, whatever. Gordon Ramsay comes in, tells them all the stuff, and they argue with him. And it's just like, why are you here? Like, why did you sign up for this show? And then it's also interesting to go and look how many of those businesses, after he leaves, they do the things for 6 months, and then they go back to the way they were doing it before, and the business fails completely.
Yeah, that's I mean, really what that is, that's a form of a business transformation. Transformation can be an exciting word or a big scary word.
Sure.
In fact, it's one that you might choose to not even use when you're talking about you're making a change in your company. Some people choose to say, we're going to launch a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, well, what does that mean?
Sure.
And what does it mean to me? And what does it mean to my job? So the definition of transformation is changing shape, changing form, turning into something new and different. And so it's, in essence, when you make improvements to your processes, your teams, your people, your how you do what you do, it is a form of a transformation. Now, the stats out there, if you look at what percent of transformations succeed versus fail, depending on the source, it's as high as 90% fail. Okay. And so you're like, well, hang on a minute. Why would we ever launch a transformation if it has a 90% failure rate? Well, you got to really have some ideas of what will it take to be successful. Now, one of the things we've already talked about is understanding your culture in the first place.
Yep.
Understanding what motivates individuals and what are their individual goals or pains. And if you can end up creating a situation that aligns with their goals, your team members, aligns with your team members, desire to solve problems, and you can solve some of those problems. Now they're interested. Yep. And if you just, have a culture of let's try it, continuous improvement minded, let's try it and see what happens. I follow, PDCA, the plan, do, check, act cycle, the Deming wheel, the Shewhart cycle, all of these names of the same principle, which is come up with the plan, let's execute it and see what happens. Yes. Let's check, ask what we learned, look at the data, and then based on what we learned, what do we do next? And keep that cycle going. And if you can keep that cycle going, then you're in a position where you are making progress towards a better place.
Right.
And all of that is business transformation.
Yep.
But it's not as scary.
I was talking yesterday with a couple of the girls in our office. We just started a new job creation process for all of the department heads. The problem we had was every single department head was creating jobs in a different way and wanting purchase orders done a different way. And so if one of the girls had to be out of the office and the other one had to cover, they had to learn 5 different processes to do the same job. And every person wanted things done and had gotten used to things being done catered to the way that they wanted it. It creates a huge nightmare. Now the girls have to memorize all of the different ways that it needs to be done. Some ways are easier, some ways are harder, some ways require more paperwork, some ways don't. And so we are in the middle of developing this process to make some changes and streamline the process. And yesterday, in talking with a couple of them, they said, "So here's the thing: not everything is working the way we had hoped it would work. There are things that we didn't realize were going to come up until we started trying it out." And I said, "That's great. So let's give it a couple weeks. Then you guys sit down, talk about what's working, what's not working. We'll make some adjustments. We'll make some fine tunings. And then we'll bring it to the team and say, hey, I know we talked about this. We're going to try this instead. We're just going to tweak some things. We're not going back. We're not going to cave. We're not going to start doing things individually again. But we do realize that maybe we didn't have everything all figured out. And so this is the new direction." And I compared it to a football game, right? If you look at your you go 3 and out and you come off the field, and then you go back out and you go 3 and out and you come off the field and you go back out and you come in. If you're not making little adjustments after each 4 downs, you're going to lose the game. And if you try and make the adjustments at the end of the game, it's too late. You lost the game. So you have to constantly be looking at it and tweaking and changing and being flexible in the plan.
That's right. One magic word is experiment. If you can get people, they may not buy into a big change, but they will buy into an experiment, right? And then if you can get them to buy into a period of time, they're likely to complain the most right after the change. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yep.
And so if you can get a buy-in period, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, try it, commit to try this for 30 days. I love that you said, look, we're not going to go back to what it was, but we're happy to make it better than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the other comparison, we have a weight loss challenge here every year because, let's be honest, you lose the weight, you put the weight back on. It's just what it is.
You found what you lost, right?
Yeah. And so I was trying to tell people, like, it's if you ever go from your regular eating plan and you decide you're going to go keto, right? You get the keto flu, which is not pleasant, but it goes away. It gets better. It's hard in the beginning. You think, why am I doing this? I'm spending too much time in the bathroom. The food's not even that good. I'm not seeing results. And then there's a switch and it all goes away. And now it's just the new way that you eat, and you feel better and you feel healthier and it's faster. And all those issues and problems that you had with your lifestyle and then switched out of that lifestyle and all those small things, they all got better too. And so now it's just a new way of doing things, but you have to get through the difficulty. You have to get through the rough early stages of the change. It's there's a pastor that we used to listen to, and he said, if you go to the gym and you expect to get bigger without any pain, you're a fool. Like, there's going to be some struggle there. The question is it worth it?
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about with keto, I have not done keto myself, so I don't have.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I don't have the firsthand experience of the keto flu, but it sounds like it's a physiological change. It's not even just a mental change. So
Right.
a lot of times what happens with people's resistance comes up and they complain about a change, and it's a resistance just based on their own internal comfort. It's
Right.
not because they, physically, it's like, wow, my stomach doesn't feel good, I got to run to the bathroom. That's, there's a little bit more credence to that as a possible excuse to say, I'm not sure this is for me.
Right.
And then the evidence of something better on the other side is what might get somebody to stick with it. The idea of creating breakthrough results, breakthrough performance, the idea of breaking through, it means you have to go through. You have to go through the change, the experience, maybe it's the no pain, no gain in the gym environment.
Sure.
You don't have to hurt yourself, but you may get uncomfortable. And that's back to the beliefs. Discomfort may be okay.
Yep. And change is inevitable either way. It's either going to be positive or negative. Things don't stay the same forever. I know you have a hard cap at 2:30 our time, 3:30 your time, and we always end every show with prayer because I think it's really, really important.
Great.
And it's my show, and so I can do that. And so if you're listening and you have any prayer requests, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will make sure to add those in. Pete, do you have any prayer requests for us?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, I have, a friend of mine, he lost his wife, recently. And his name's Bill. So let's just give Bill some guidance and support and some love. Send it his way.
No, that's, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully they're doing okay. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we can wrap up. So, Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to talk with Pete. Thank you for bringing a new person into my life that I can have a relationship with. And we just pray that this message would reach people that need to hear it, that leadership would change, that organizations would change for the better, and that through all of it, we would be able to find new ways to care about people, to love on people, and through all of that, everybody would grow and benefit. We pray for Pete's friend and their family, and all the people that we know that are struggling with cancer or other diseases, for testing that's going on. We just pray that you would be in control of it, and that your will would be done, and we would be able to know that all things happen for our good and for your glory, even if we don't see it. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pete, anything else you want to touch base on in the next 4 minutes and 2 seconds?
Well, really gratitude for you, Tony, for being here and inviting me on in the first place. I love what you're doing, and I think it's important. You and not just what your company does with plastics and molding and all. Just those are hard goods and products. And the thing is, as we were talking about before, that what you do creates products that people use, and it helps them. And so, there's a ripple effect that takes place in the world. So you do it through your company, you do it through this podcast, and I just appreciate you for being out there.
Well, thank you. I don't always take compliments well, but thank you. I love doing this podcast because I have the opportunity to talk with people like yourself and other business owners, and share what's actually going on in the world, and what's going on in my world, in my heart, and introduce an audience to people like yourself. So if you guys want to know more about Pete, again, he's got books on business transformation, on leadership, on goal achievement. And he also has his own podcast, the Business Results Radio. So real quick, how do people find Business Results Radio?
Yeah, well, two ways. Our company website is winenterprisesllc.com, and there's a podcast link there, but also businessresultsradio.com. Then you can catch up that way. The the nice thing about Business Results Radio is we try and keep a rhythm of interesting conversations, as well with people who are looking either to make a bigger imprint on the world, or they are doing something interesting, or have had great business results, or might have a nugget of knowledge that will help business leaders. So that's the idea behind that podcast.
Well, maybe this is what I do. I just invite myself to other things. Maybe at some point we can
play together.
Yeah, maybe we can play in the same sandbox, row in the same direction, however you want to put it. But
yeah,
I wouldn't say I'm an expert at much, but I would love to come on and chat with you at some point. And that's my own self-invitation. It's amazing how many times I do that.
It's a self-plug that sounds great. I think it'd be fun to do.
All right. Pete, thank you. We made it. I'm going to get you out of here with a minute and 30 seconds to spare. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for giving back and really helping businesses and organizations achieve what is really success. And that's important. So many ways, so many reasons, especially now when we're trying to make sure that American manufacturing continues to grow and flourish. So thank you for all your effort. And if you guys need to get a hold of Pete, his information will be in the chat, and all of the links and everything on our show notes. And yeah, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Tony, and your team.
All right. Have a great day.
You as well.
All right, everybody, thank you for watching and listening. That was Pete Winiarski. Really good dude. It's actually second time. That would be a lie. It's the second time I talked to him. Last week we tried doing this show. It was a disaster, and that was okay because we regrouped, we refocused, we came back, and I think it was really good. I love all the things that he had to say, especially about different ways that you can give encouragement to invoke change. That it's not overnight. That you have to. This is key. You have to build a relationship with people if you want them to hear you and listen to you and change in some positive way. It's not going to happen just because you say, "Hey, listen, do it." It used to, right? When my father started this company, it was, and well, up until a little while ago, probably the same thing because he was here. Jackass, just do it. It's the way I said, do it. And that's an old school mentality. It doesn't work in parenting. It doesn't work in relationships. It doesn't work at work. It's just an old way to do things. And so, if you don't get anything else out of today's show, just know that relationships matter. They're one of our core values. It's who we are as a company, and that's one of the reasons that we do this show. We want to have new relationships and stronger relationships with our listening audience and with the manufacturing audience as a whole. So, if you like what you heard, please like it, share it, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and please pass it on to a friend. Even if there's one small nugget that you got out of it, it would mean a lot to us. And if you really thought it was good, it'll mean a lot to them. That's all I got for today. That's enough. Will we be back next week? We don't know. Perfect. If you would like to be a guest on the show next week, I know it's short notice, go ahead and send us an email at vanessa@alliancelasersales.com. I don't know why she's laughing so hard. Vanessa F. It's the only one in the company that's like that. Vanessa F@alliancelasersales.com. And she's also on LinkedIn, and you can find her there. But we would love to have you on the show and talk about what's going on in your life and your business, what you're seeing, and how you can help make an impact. So until next week, I'm confident that we will have a guest. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Take care, and God bless.